Welcome to the first Arena Meta Report in Rise of Shadows. This is the first meta ever to feature a rotating set. With old sets from the Year of the Mammoth rotating out, this meta feels very different than Rastakhan's Rumble. In this report, we'll talk about key themes that shape this meta. At the end, we'll also discuss the current class tier list. An Arena class ranking can typically be observed on HS Replay. However, certain classes like Druid show deceptively weaker stats and don't actually reflect their true strength. Keep in mind, class rankings can definitely change as Blizzard promised micro-adjustments and rebucketing to occur without a defined schedule. This video will be based on the first update that happened a week after Rise of Shadows, which lowered Rogue's high win rate. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the Tempo Storm YouTube channel to keep up to date with our Hearthstone content. Now, let's begin. The first topic we'll discuss is the curve. As we initially predicted, the reign of 3-drops has ended. A lot of premium 3-drops have rotated out, and it's unlikely you'll be able to hit 5 good 3-drops in an average draft. The curve often starts on turn 2 for most classes. It needs to start on turn 2 because cards like Messenger Raven and Darkshire Councilman exist. 2-drops can test these 3-drops decently well, and you can keep up with tempo by consistently playing a card on turn 2. We recommend drafting 2 3s over 3 2s due to the popularity of Henchclan Hogsteed. The card looks like an upgraded Bluegill Warrior, but the 1/1 body is very relevant in assisting kills. It also makes your opponent do awkward things such as hero powering on turn 3. Another Rise of Shadows card that favors 2 3s is Flightmaster. It allows your 2/3 to value trade the 2/2 and gives you a good tempo lead. For your 3-mana slot, there is no general rule on how many you should have, as it's now more dependent on the class you play. For example, Warlock is a class that needs a bunch of 1-drops and can usually get away with 2 3-drops due to cards like Evil Genius that you can play on turn 3. A contrasting example is Rogue. For Rogue, you usually still need 5 3-drops as you're not taking as many 2-drops due to your hero power and need to curve out on 3. The dominance of 3-drops is also hindered by more quality 4-drops. A key card right now is Proud Defender. It has the ability to eat most 3-drops in the game while contesting 5-drops. Speaking of 5-drops, there really aren't many good ones right now. Dalaran Crusader is clearly the best one, but that's about it. Minions that give 4/6 or 5/5 worth of stats can't compete with 6-drops and usually do very little against a wide board. Additionally, Dalaran Crusader can already eat a bunch of suboptimal 5-drops. There are several taunts at the 5-drop slot, but they feel a bit over-bucketed right now. For example, Sludge Belcher has to compete with premium neutrals such as Sea Giant and Haunted Creeper. In terms of the late game curve, there really isn't any clear guideline. We find that you usually end up with a bunch of 6-drops due to the power level of Eccentric Scribe. However, after the 6-drop slot, the quality of late game minions falls off drastically. Late game taunts such as Bog Creeper and Furious Etten just die to Burly Shovelfist. Plus, they also feel a bit over-bucketed. There are some premium epic neutrals such as Sea Giant and Batterhead, but they rarely appear in the meta. We find an average deck should still aim for 3 late-game cards that cost more than 6 mana to avoid running out of gas. However, you can compensate the lack of big minions with Discover effects, such as Messenger Raven and Marked Shot, or draft more quality 6-mana minions. Speaking of the best 6-drop at the moment, let's talk about the next topic, tokens. In the last meta, token generation was kept at bay with Dragonmaw Scorcher. This is obviously no longer the case. The meta is filled with lackey generation and premium neutral minions that generate tokens. As a result, cards that benefit from having a wide board become much better. Conversely, cards right now that deal with tokens effectively have also become even better. The problem, though, is that board clear effects are simply not that common, and they are, for the most part, correctly bucketed. The only neutral minion that can clear a wide board is Batterhead, which is an epic that shows up infrequently. Taunts should theoretically be better against wide boards, but your opponent can simply play curve minions such as Dalaran Crusader to effectively punch through them. The best class right now, Warlock, takes advantage of token generation and is able to create wide boards over and over again, which is incredibly hard to deal with. At the same time, Warlock has a bunch of board clears that can wipe the board if a wide board is used on them. It's no surprise that Warlock is #1 right now, and we'll talk more about them in the class tier list later on. The last topic we want to talk about is the art of going face. In the current meta, we no longer have Death Speaker, Fungalmancer, and Bone Mare. The only cards you have to play around are impactful board clears that happen in specific turns, such as an Abyssal Enforcer or Flamestrike on turn 7. This means you can easily avoid your opponent's board by hitting face early. This was not at all possible in the past when you had those win more effects and poisonous minions sticking around. To go along with this game plan, you can simply drop a taunt in front of your opponent's smaller minions while your other minions keep going face. Direct damage spells are great additions to your deck right now to act as finishers for the aggressive endgame. It's often difficult to know when to start going face, but the best indication is when your opponents continue to play weak curve minions such as Messenger Ravens. You can easily drop a Proud Defender and push more damage with your early game minions in this scenario. Okay, let's end our report with the current class tier list. Once again, this list can change at any time depending on when Blizzard pulls out the balance changes. The rankings currently look like this. At the top is Warlock. Our arena expert Tachii has been averaging 9.5 wins with Warlock over 10 runs, and the class simply feels unbeatable at times. The best way to draft Warlock is to aim for a token strategy around Evil Genius. You want to aim for at least 3 1-drops and have a bunch of token generators such as Haunted Creeper and Rafam Scheme. At the end of the curve, you top out your deck with a couple Abyssal Enforcers and a Fellfire Potion for the final reach. A single Hellfire can still be useful in this aggressive Zoo lineup, as you can still end up behind on the board if you go second. Voidcaller synergy is also a strong drafting game plan due to how much tempo you can get with a 6/6 on the board on turn 5. After Warlock, we have Priest and Hunter. Priest feels a lot different than in the past. A consistent drafting strategy we've identified is drafting overstatted minions and further buffing them. Right now, Evil Conscriptor, Temple Enforcer, and Cabal Talon Priest are near auto picks in their buckets. This is a very interesting decision, considering Cabal Talon Priest is compared to top bucket cards such as Mind Control and Shadow Word Death. The reason Talon Priest is so good right now is how common 2-drops are and how scarce poisonous minions are. It just gives so much stats in the early game that allow Priest to gain total board control. You can often ignore minions your opponent plays and just go face with your overstatted minions because there are very little removal options for them. We predict if Warlock ever gets toned down, Priest will likely take its spot as the best class. Hunter, on the other hand, feels a lot different. With Mark Shot and Unleash the Beast in the pool, you can often outvalue your opponent. That is by no means the only strategy, but an aggro control strategy can get the job done. You want to draft a curve from turn 2 to turn 6, and then you have these removal spells sprinkled in between. Keep your mid-game minions healthy to push damage while the spells remove your opponent's minions. Finally, try to mix in a couple of direct damage spells to reach the finish line. The next tier is Rogue, Mage, and Druid. Despite the balancing of Rogue, the class drafts very much the same way as before. Draft the solid curve from turn 3 to turn 6 and get the most out of your hero power. You definitely want some value generation, as it's quite easy to run out of gas. The class can often feel like a weaker hunter due to having a similar game plan, but less access to value and reach to get there. Mage is in an interesting spot. The class struggles to control the board against the top classes, but can cheese out wins with Messenger Ravens, Conjurer's Calling, and other random effects. The class has access to very powerful board clears, but Blizzard and Volcanic Potion are quite rare. You will see them at high wins though, so keep it in mind when playing against them. In general, the class feels like you need to high roll the draft to reach far. For Druid, the game plan is all about tokens. Mark of the Lotus is the best board buffing card right now and shows up very commonly in the draft. Draft your token generators and curve out from turn 1 and finish the game with cards like Savage Roar and Starfire. You don't see many Druids right now, and most players are still not focused on the aggressive token strategy, which is very efficient right now. At tier 3, we have Paladin and Shaman. These classes can still high roll and get to high wins, but it often feels like other classes can just do it better. Paladin, for example, almost feels too balanced right now. There isn't any marked shots, Conjurer's Calling, or Lackey generation. Bronze Herald shows up a lot, but it doesn't have the same high roll potential as Messenger Raven. The game plan for Paladin remains the same as before. Have a decent curve, buff some minions, and hope your opponent doesn't have an answer. Shaman is interesting in that there's a lot of high roll potential with evolve effects. Despite this, the class can be very awkward with overload. It definitely feels less consistent than the top 5 classes. And then there's Warrior. Control is definitely no longer an option for Garrosh, but even when it comes to tempo, just about any other class can do it better with the exception of Paladin. We have seen some nice drafts with Pirate synergy, but those drafts are rare. We hope the class will be adjusted to have more powerful cards, but even then it's unlikely to reach the top half of the tier list. And this wraps up our first Arena Meta Report in Rise of Shadows. Depending on how early the next balance update happens in Arena, we'll be back with another report. Let us know in the comments what classes you've been having the most success with. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with our Hearthstone content. See you next time!